Hi everybody, it's John back again with another model inbox review. Um, this is an interesting early generation jet ground attack aircraft. It was originally designed as a jet fighter um, by Dassault Aviation, but unfortunately it didn't quite have the power to weight ratio to perform as a jet fighter, and it very quickly became a ground attack aircraft by all of the forces that used it. The aircraft, of course, is a Dassault MD-450 Ouragan. Um, but which model am I actually doing an inbox review on? Well, I'm doing an inbox review on this kit, which is the Valom multimedia boxing of the Dassault MD-450 Ouragan in Israeli Air Force markings. Now this is actually the original release of this kit, which was originally released in 2011, and there are two options available in this kit. One of an Israeli Air Force ground attack aircraft, and the other is of the French Air Force, and you'll see the lithograph that comes in the box, which is really very nice in a minute. I quite like the Ouragan. It's quite a sexy, quite a good looking aircraft. But it is one of the early generation jet fighters, which became a ground attack aircraft, as I said. Ouragan in French it actually means hurricane, which is interesting. And the Israeli Air Force used this aircraft as a stopgap, really, and they utilised it quite extensively in the ground attack role. In the I think it was in the 6 Day War. Pretty sure it was in the 6 Day War, where they used these aircraft to great effect to virtually extinguish the Egyptian Air Force on the ground within the first couple of days. Anyway, that was the 2011 release from Valom. The reason why this kit is a multimedia kit is because you'll see in a minute it has photo etch parts, and it also has resin parts, both of which I've never used before, so it's going to be quite interesting to get to grips with those. Anyway, that's the first original release, 2011. The second release came in 2011 of the Dassault Salvador and India variants. This was released the same year, of the MD-450 Ouragan, but this time called the Tufani. Which it was named by those two air forces when it was utilised in service by India and El Salvador. That was released in 2011, the same year as the initial release. Then in 2011 also Valom released the French National Air Force variant, and the Ouragan was actually utilised in the training role, the advanced training role, to teach fighter pilots how to fly jet aircraft in the 1950s. And it was a very prominently used aircraft by the French Air Force. So that's the MD-450 in 2011 release by Valom. Then in 2012, Valom released the MD-450 Ouragan, and this is, I believe, it's an updated version of the original Ouragan. But I'm pretty sure it's the same model inside the box that you get inside, inside the kit that I've got here as well. But that's the French Air Force Ouragan. Lastly, in 2013, Valom released a boxing of the MD-450 Ouragan's PAF variant, which was utilised by the Patrouille de France. I can't remember what year they actually utilised them, but I've got a feeling it was around about 1952. When they started using these aircraft, and I do believe that the Ouragan was the first jet mount of the Patrouille de France as well. I think before that they utilised piston-engined aircraft. So anyway, that's 2013, and that's the Valom boxing. We'll leave you with a nice image here of an Israeli Air Force variant. I do believe this is actually a model. I do believe it's the Valom kit that he's used to produce this model. But it's quite difficult to get an image of the Ouragan in pictorial image and colour, but I wanted to try and show you guys what this aircraft would look like in Israeli Air Force markings. So what we'll do first of all, we'll just pan the camera down and show you this really quite highly praised model by the modelling community. They really like this kit a lot. The stand is actually quite difficult to get to angle in the correct angle. There we go. So this is the box. It's quite a large box. There's my hand in front of the box, as you can see. It's quite a large box. A nice image on the front of the IAF variants of the Ouragan. The shark's teeth insignia on the front of this aircraft, that was actually a feature of this squadron. And also the squadron badge on the side, that was also a feature of this squadron during hostilities. On the side edge front you've got the kit number 72060, and there's some precautionary information there in Czech and English. Valom is actually a Czech Republic company. They're actually based in the Czech Republic in Prague. And there's their address there on the side there. Recyclable materials, and please get rid of the box responsibly. So we'll open the box, have a look, see what we've got inside. And there's not a huge amount to look at in here, and I'm not expecting this inbox of you to take a long time, but what is in here is actually really quite nice. So what we'll do, we'll just take these parts out in the order that I want to show you guys what these parts look like. So we'll just put that box down there. The instruction leaflet is a really nice, well presented colour instruction leaflet. It's in about A5, but it opens up into A4 horizontally, and you've got two separate pieces of paper. You've got general information and a paint call-out plan on the outside edges of these. Humbrol colours are on the left-hand side, which is nice. And on the inside edges, you've got this really nice colour lithograph showing you the paint guide and the marking locating IDs on this, which is quite nice. I quite like the look of this. Interestingly enough, they do state, and a lot of the pro builders, they really like this kit quite a lot, but it's not an easy model. It's not for the novice builder. I'll show you why in a minute. But they do state every time in every review I've ever seen that you need to paint these red star lines on the front of the drop tanks. That isn't actually true, because that was only a feature, I think, of one escadrille that used this aircraft. I think the remainder of the French Air Force squadrons just had a lot of these aircraft were just plain bare metal, and with no red flash lines over many of them at all. Some of them had a red leading edge to the tail fin and a red top, and they had red leading edges to the wings and tail planes, but most of them were plain bare metal, as suggested here. Even the drop tanks were plain bare metal. So you don't really need to go to the extent of messing around too much with the red features on the aircraft. That's the paint guide and the decal application guide. We'll open the instruction leaflet up first of all, and on the first page you've got a rather nice parts guide on the very first page, which shows you ID numbers for every part. You've got a transparency guide, there's an ordnance set there, and you'll see those parts very soon. And then you come to the decal guide, which is quite nice, and then you come to the reason why this kit is not an easy build and not recommended for novice builders. You've got quite a comprehensive PE sheet there, which also incorporates an entire instrument panel in photo etch parts, and there's also a separate film part here. I'm not sure how best to apply that. I'll probably have to do some research, but this is the instrument panel that fits over the top of this PE set, and I'm guessing you'd have to paint that and then find some way of gluing that to that in order to produce that. And you've got, it states here that you've got one resin part. There's actually 3 resin parts in this kit, because it's also got a jet pipe made out of resin, which is really nice looking. It's very attractive. A nice ejection seat. There is no ejection seat plastic moulded part in the kit you have to use the ejection seat that's in resin, but there's also a front wheel in resin as well, which looks remarkably better than the one that is on the sprue. The build of the kit, it builds up in 10 stages, which is quite a few actually. But the actual transition of build is quite simple and straightforward. But in sections 1, 2 and 3 you can see that there's quite a lot of messing around, like finicky parts to mess around with here and there. You've got that PE part F1, which is the instrument panel. They're suggesting you actually put that onto part 7, and then you've got the film, oh sorry, that's the photo etch part, and the film is at the back. That's interesting, didn't realise that. That is definitely the right part, isn't it? Yeah. So they're saying that you've got to put the film in between part 7 and the photo etch part, and then you've got another part here which I think is a transparency part, which is the gun sight. And then in section 2 you've got this resin seat, which will have to be cleaned up, cut off the block, cleaned up and painted. And then you've got some photo etch straps here, which I've had a look at them, and you obviously take them off the photo etch sheet and then bend them to the required shape and apply them to the seat. I do understand that you can use 2 types of glue. One is super glue and the other is epoxy resin. I'll probably be using super glue for those parts. You've got a nice bathtub here that the seat fits into, and it's quite detailed, and it is quite highly praised as being detailed by the pro builders and the reviewers. They really like this kit a lot. But I will talk about the kit's main opposition as well, because that's not a bad kit too, but I'll talk about that later. In section 5 you're marrying the fuselage with the bathtub and the rear bulkhead. That all goes in quite nicely. I think you're going to need some weights in the nose of this kit, otherwise it will sit on its tail. And then you've got the undercarriage, the main airframe parts and the drop tanks, which all go together here, and they're also suggesting you put the canopy into place there in section 6. I don't tend to put the canopies until after I've painted the airframe up. And then in section 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, actually 6 is interesting because 6 has been doubled up. You've got section 6 there, and then you've got section 6 again. So yeah, well done Valom. You've got 6, 7, 8, 9, which relates basically to the ordnance, and then the main undercarriage and nose wheel. And then you've got some various other fitments and the placing of the various sub-assemblies to produce this angled edge for the undercarriage and the way the ordnance is supposed to be set up. There's not an awful lot of the wing that houses ordnance, but there are 6 pylons on this kit, and they have ordnance on all of them. Also, this part here, there is actually a part on the sprue in plastic, but there's also a resin wheel, and the resin wheel looks phenomenally better than the resin part, which is great. So anyway, that's the instructions. Not a lot to be worried too much about that. You've got a photo edge sheet here that's quite nicely, it produces some quite nice parts on there. There's the instrument panel, you can see it's quite, yeah, I'm going to get to grips with that this time. I've had photo etch parts in models before but never used them, but I'm going to have a bash at using these. The decals are actually very nice. I've opened these up before, but I just wanted to show you these. I want to keep them in the bag to keep them nice and dry and clean and everything. But the decals are actually really nicely registered. Valom use a company, I think they're made in the Czech Republic, and they produce some very, very nice decals, and the register on them is very good. They're not too highly raised. The backing film is incredibly clear, and they just, I've got inside information from various other people that have built Valom kits that their decals are actually really nice. Now then, we'll go to the other side of the media here. We've got a little bag here with some resin parts, and you can see the resin parts there. There's an ejection seat. It's quite nicely moulded, nicely cast. That obviously is going to need to be cut off that block and then cleaned up and then painted. You've got a jet pipe at the back. That is a nice piece of work, and there's your nose wheel, and that's quite nicely moulded as well. Not too much to write home about, but the shape, the general overall shape of that wheel is better than the one on the sprue. So I'll be using that as well. You've got 2 sprues and a transparency sprue in this bag. It's basically all the ordnance and the pylons and the canopy and the gun sight there. I'm going to open this up because I want to show you the canopy. The canopy on this is really nice. As you can see, transparency parts. That's really quite nice, isn't it? That's going to paint up really nice. It's relatively clear. Framing's very defined. You've got a little gun sight at the back there as well. There we go. That's a very nice piece of work. I like the look of that, so I'm quite impressed with that. Pop that back in the bag as well. I think if you've got these bags, you should try and keep them, keep the parts used up. But one of the things that is quite good about Valom is they do individually wrap all of their parts, which is quite nice. But I need to open this one to show you what's in here, because what's in here is actually really, really tasty. Valom is classed as a short-run model company. They build what's classed as short-run models. And the thing about short-run models is that there's no locating pins anywhere. If I turn this over, you can see the inside of the fuselage halves, and you can see that there's a complete absence of locating pins to line the fuselage halves up on. There's also no locating pins on the wings. There's nothing to line them up. You have to line them up by eyesight. And all of the drop tanks, all of the parts, in fact, are completely free of locating pins. But the thing I've realised, and the pro builders and reviewers actually, it's the reason why I noticed this very, very quickly, is that compared with this kit's opposition, which is actually the Heller injected moulded kit, which is a lot older, it's an 80s design. It came out in about 1983. The Valom kit is far superior in surface detail, and this is exactly how the Ouragan looked, and its surface detail isn't overdone. It's not heavy, it's got nice recessed panel lines, and there's lots and lots of very finely detailed riveting. Can you see that? And the riveting, according to quite a lot of the professional builders and reviewers, the riveting doesn't need anything doing to it. It doesn't need rubbing down. It's absolutely spot on. And the riveting detail on the underside of that wing, you can see it's really, really nicely cast. And I think, you guys that work with oil washes, I think you could really go to town if you built a bare metal version of this kit. French Air Force, very, very nice. The Israeli also had a number of bare metal aircraft as well. They weren't all in camouflage patterns. Some of them were bare metal finish, which is quite nice. You've got quite a lot of parts here, which they're quite nicely detailed parts. The main undercarriage wheels there. There's the nose wheel. It's not that bad actually, but the resin nose wheel is much more accurate. You've got a bulkhead there, which has got some surface detail on it, and then you've got the surface detail on the airframe itself, the fuselage halves. And again, it is quite heavily festooned with rivets, but I'll be honest with you, the real aircraft was riveted together as well. It really did look like this. There's not much in the way of sinkholes anywhere pronounced, really. Quite large gates to all the parts, but this is typical of short-run parts. But the parts look incredibly nice. I'm very, very impressed with these parts on these sprues, and they look relatively clean, the actual parts themselves. Very nice indeed. I'm very impressed with that. So that's the parts on the Valom kit. Quite nice. I think you'd agree that the model itself, I think it is going to be just as the pro builders suggest. It's going to be a nice but taxing build, which is a bit of a shame, isn't it? So what I'm going to do now is just give you an image to look at, so you can have a look at that, and then I'm going to go through the gump and close this video down. The aircraft itself is a Valom release of the Marcel Dassault MD 450 Ouragan in the Israeli Air Force packaging. The serial number is 72060 and it's moulded in 1/72nd scale, and it was originally released in 2011. There are two decals for two versions. The first is an MD 450 Ouragan of the Shel Hal Afer number 70 of 113 Squadron in the Taja set, or Israeli Air Force, circa 1956 during the Suez Crisis. The second is an MD 450 Ouragan of number 154 LEC 2 of 4 La Lafayette Squadron, and this aircraft is found in the Air Museum in Paris de Bourget. There are 70 parts on 3 grey plastic sprues, 2 parts on 1 transparent plastic sprue, 3 resin parts and 23 parts on a PE sheet, totalling 98 parts in total. The kit should measure about 6 inches in length, and it should have a wingspan of about 7 inches, and it should sit about 2.5 inches high on its undercarriage. Now the options and costs, I've actually included all of the options and costs because there aren't that many. But what it's actually about is actually quite good. The quality of what is on the market in the Ouragan range is actually very good. In 144 scale, there's a company called Mini Wing that produce an MD 450 Ouragan, which is all resin cast. And this kit retails about £8 to £20, and it has got quite good highly praise from the pro builders. They quite like this, with a 2-star rating. In 72nd scale, Hella build an injection moulded variant of the MD 450 Ouragan. That retails about £9 to £25. That carries a 2-star rating, and they actually think that that's a pretty good option as well. And it would offer a much simpler build. Hella also produced a 100 years Dassault Aviation set comprising an MD 450, a Mirage 3C, a Super Étendard, and a Mirage 2000C, and all of these are Hella released original kits. Some were also released under the Humbrol boxings. This set retails about 25 to 35 quid. Hella also produced a Patrol de France set comprising an MD 450, a Vuga Magister, and an Alpha Jet, and this kit retails for 20 to 40 pound. Then you have the Valom release in various different boxings of the MD 450 Ouragan, and that kit retails between 10 and 20 pound, and that kit carries a 3-star rating by the pro builders and reviewers. They really like this kit a lot. Hella Humbrol did a rebox of the Hella kit of the MD 450 Ouragan that retails anything between 9 and 25 quid. And then in 148 scale, there are 2 resin cast kits standalone, one from Isracast of an MD 450 Ouragan. That kit retails for about 60 to 75 pound. And then there's a company called JMGT who produce a 450 MD Ouragan. Again, it's a resin cast kit, but this kit is incredibly expensive because it's very rare. There aren't many left available to scoop up, and it holds a badge of around about 150 to 200 quid. Conclusions. Right, I don't think this kit is a recommended model for beginners, as it has no location pins on most of the parts. It also has resin and photo etch parts which will require special tools and super glue or epoxy resin for glue. It's the first Valom kit I will be attempting, and the first with PE and resin contents that I'll also be using. That said, its detail looks really nice, with nice finely detailed rivets and recessed panel lines. There's no pilot figure, but the resin cast ejection seat and jet pipe look really nice. Good quality decals and a very nice lithograph for a paint guide, and everything seems to be provided in the box. Let's see how I do with this resin and PE, and hopefully I can produce something pretty much half decent. Recommendations for kits. In the 48 scale kits, there's not much about for novices, and the JMGT kit is very rare and so holds a very high price. In 144 scale, the Mini Wing kit is not bad and it looks fairly good built up. And for 72nd scale, I would favour the Hella kit for the easier build, although it is an older mould, so raised panel lines and basic interiors. But the pro reviewers love the Valom kit, and it gets really good praise. So for a more hardened modeler, I would definitely recommend the Valom boxing. I hope this video has been of some use. I am sort of a little bit apprehensive about the build on this kit, but I'm going to give it a good go. Also, before I go, I do want to show you a couple of things. The first, the first, you're going to wonder what on earth I'm talking about, but resin parts require quite a lot of specialised tools. One of them is one of these. Yep, that is a hacksaw. You're going to need either a jigsaw or a hacksaw to get the parts off the block in the resin cast parts. And for PE, if I get on with PE, I might go into investing in a bending block, for a PE bending block if you like. But for now, somebody's told me that one of these is actually quite useful, and a screwdriver, an AF screwdriver. But basically PE parts, they can be cut off the sheet, cleaned up with a modelling knife, and then you bend them over a straight edge metal platform like this. This is just an ordinary hinge, and you use an AF screwdriver as a bending tool, and this would be like your bending block. So I'm going to try and have a go with these two tools with an AF screwdriver and see how I go. As I said before, I hope this video has been of use. Thanks for tuning in. I hope all your build projects are running really smooth, and it's still COVID-19 pandemic out there in the world. Let's try and stay safe, and whilst you're doing your modelling, the most important thing is, of course, to have a lot of fun. If you have any questions, comments, just pop them in the questions and comments boxes underneath, and I'll try and get back to any questions as quickly as possible. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.